If you look at Revelation chapter 13, as we begin to look at the Antichrist, there's few aspects to it. And even the aspect of in terms of what you believe about the Antichrist, where he stands in relation to the nation of Israel, and where you stand in relationship to the Roman Catholic Church, and things like that. And I'm not sure whether we're going to get up to that this evening, but certainly there are many false views about the Antichrist. And we need to always go back to the Scriptures and see where these errors have come from. And some of the errors that have come from about the Antichrist have come from the Roman Catholic Church itself. And they've already said that these things are already in the past, that the book of Revelation is already in the past, it's already happened, and we need to be careful about those ideas and things. So let's read chapter 13. Oh, there's 18 verses, but we'll just quickly go through that. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. So we see already in this very first verse is this beast, and we'll look in more particular about this beast, what this beast represents. But we notice that this beast, and upon their heads that there's 10 crowns, and we will come to look at that in the weeks to come, about the 10 kingdoms across this globe. And in fact it's already been set up. I think I'll have a slide in here, how the world is broken up into 10 groups, and each one will have a king to rule over those groups. And of course under that umbrella of those kings will be the Antichrist. But notice that upon his heads, plural, not head. So we're not talking particularly about the Antichrist, but about these nations, that it is the name of blasphemy, which is already the spirit of Antichrist.
Sorry, Pastor, what chapter is that?
13, Revelation 13. Yeah. Did I not say 13?
You probably did. I didn't hear. Sorry.
Okay. Huh? All right, verse 2. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet was the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And so we'll look at those. What do they represent? What is this some sort of conglomeration of different nations, or is it part of Daniel's vision and things like that? We're going to look at that and to try and put all these things together. But we notice that in this verse 2, the dragon. And the dragon is a symbol, as we've seen a few chapters in the book of Revelation. The dragon is who? Satan. So Satan here is in control, and he is the one, the God of this era, the God of this world, who gives this great authority. Verse 3, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded. So when we're talking about the heads, we're going back to verse 1, again about the 10 horns and the 10 crowns and the 10 heads and those sort of things, ideas. But this one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given to him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. Remember that these 10 kingdoms, or the 10 nations that has been this world broken up into, in verse 1, talks about blasphemy there. And this Antichrist will also have a great mouth, or have a mouth that's speaking great things and blasphemies. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And that's not 7 years. That's not 7 years. What's going on here? If he only has a rule for 42 months, how long is 42 months? 3.5 years. So what's going on? And we'll look at that as well. Verse 6. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. Wow. To blaspheme not only God, not only the tabernacle, but us. Those dirty, rotten Christians who are not here any longer. Those that are in heaven. Verse 7. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. Now we'll look at who the second beast is as well. It's very important. Verse 15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell. That's where I get the bell from, you see, because he buy and sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. 666. Okay. So, where we finished off last week, is the Antichrist a spirit? Is the Antichrist an empire? Is the Antichrist an individual? Well, if you look at verses 5 and 6, which we've just read, he is a kingdom. In verses 5 and 6 it says there, and there was given unto him a great mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. So the Antichrist will rule an Antichrist kingdom. Well, actually it'll be a world kingdom. Okay? We often talk about the world being like a village now, because we can just go on a plane and we're there in a couple of hours. Just fly anywhere. We're all so closely knit. If there's an illness in another country, a disease or something like that, and that person catches it, jumps on the plane, is able to infect another country. And those people can get on planes and infect another country. So the whole world can be infected. and the whole world will be divided into 10 kingdoms, and it will be ruled by the Antichrist. So all these kingdoms are really an Antichrist kingdom, the kingdom of Antichrist. So he is a kingdom, but there's also a spirit of Antichrist as well, as we've already seen this evening in our Bible reading. Is the Antichrist an empire? Yes, he will rule. And is he an individual? Yes, he is also an individual. Okay? So the Antichrist, as an empire, will rule. That is a one world government, a one world currency, a one world religion. We'll all be one. We'll all be one. We'll all have the mark. Not we'll all have them. When I say we're all, okay, we'll get to where the Antichrist fits in. But everyone is going to receive this mark. If you drop down to verse 16, it says, and he causeth all. You know, when we say for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, what do we mean by all? All. So here the Antichrist forces everyone, all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. So the kingdom of Antichrist, because it talks about blasphemy, to blaspheme the world, and these kingdoms will blaspheme Christianity. So the one world government is Antichrist, is an Antichrist. The one world currency is an Antichrist currency. The one world religion is an Antichrist religion. It is Antichrist. Go back to verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. It is definitely an empire of Antichrist. The world. Who gives the world power at this time? It's Satan. Satan is in charge. He's the God of this world. And he's given this power to these 10 crowns, these 10 kingdoms. And he's given power to the Antichrist, who was like unto the beast in verse 4, who was able to make war with him. He gives power. And he speaks blasphemy. So he's not a godly man. He's blaspheming God. And you see that in verse 6. Blaspheme against God. Turn to Revelation chapter 17. If we pick it up from verse 1, we go down to verse 3. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me. So, bowl judgments, when do they happen? It's the second half of the tribulation. Okay, the second half. We have the seal judgments first. Then follows what happens after the seal judgments. We have the trumpet judgments. So seal judgments, then trumpet judgments, then bowl judgments. And the bowl judgments happen in the second half of the tribulation period. So looking here at the second half, and I guess just to preempt a little bit, but to remember that the Antichrist rules for 3.5 years or 42 months. That's the second half, when he is indwelt by Satan. Okay? Remember, there's a battle in heaven, and he gets cast out, Satan gets cast out, and there's woe unto the inhabitants of the earth, because Satan is coming down, and he indwells the Antichrist. That's why the power is really, yes, he rules for 7 years, but his first 3.5 years, he'll be just like a normal man who's trying to do his best, maybe. But it's the second half when he really shows the true colours, when Satan indwells the Antichrist. That's why given that rule. But that's a little preempt of what we're coming up to a little later. So, saying to me, come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore, which sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth, kings plural, the kings of the earth have committed fornication. So they're all in league with the Antichrist and all in league with the false prophet. I haven't talked about the false prophet yet, but the false prophet is there. And the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-coloured beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. There's one world group, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through and look at the Antichrist. So the Antichrist will also be a man. So not only is it a nation or nations or a world, Antichrist world, and we sort of feel that today, don't we? Christians are a little problem for lawmakers today. We are still the light of the world. We're still the salt of the earth. And we are a problem. We are a problem. Christians are a problem. We are telling the rest of the world that what the laws they want to make is wrong. Is wrong. And they know that, and they mark us as Christians. They force us into a box, and they say you're bigoted and all these sort of things. But anyway, the Antichrist will also be a man. So let's go across to chapter 20 and look at verse 10. Verse 10 says, and the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast, which is the Antichrist, and the false prophet are. Now, who goes into the lake of fire? It's all those who have rejected Christ. It's not a kingdom. God doesn't throw a kingdom into the lake of fire. He might destroy kingdoms, but it's man that enters into the lake of fire. And so when it talks about the beast, and the beast being the Antichrist, is already in the lake of fire by Revelation chapter 20. So the Antichrist, yes, it'll be a world system, but it's also have a man at the head of that. And we'll look at that a little more later. So he will be the man of a one world empire. He'll be the one that will lead a world empire. A world empire. Now, if you look at this map here, so the Antichrist will be the king of a world kingdom. In Revelation chapter 17, just flick back there and look at verse 12. So verse 12, you see, you always got to go to Scripture to find out what these 7 heads and 7 horns and all these sort of things, God explains what they are. So don't just throw up in horror and say, oh, Revelation is too hard to understand. But keep reading. Keep reading. So verse 12 says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings. 10 kings. We know that they're kings anyway because of the crowns that were described way back in chapter 13. Okay? If you go back to chapter, keep your finger in 17, just go back to chapter 13, look at verse 1. And 10 horns And I stood at the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns. 10 crowns. And you are normally crowned. You've got a crown. The king has a crown. You know, we don't have crowns. Oh, well, some people have double crowns, I guess. Like Noah. He's got double crown. He must be the pastor. He's going to have double honour.
Israel's got 3.
Who?
Israel's got 3.
Has he? Oh, wow. That's going to be a problem for a hairdresser. But a crown here is to do with a king or a queen. But clearly, when you go to chapter 17 and it explains, God explains that these 10 horns are 10 kings. 10 kings. Which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Okay, the 1 hour is just a short period of time. It's the 42 months. It's the last half of the tribulation. Okay, so we're trying to put things together where they fit in the timeline. But we've already seen that these are areas that are broken up. See, it's all different colours here, but we're all broken up into 10 kingdoms. 10 kingdoms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The world is already broken up. And if you look at verse 12 here, they have no kingdom as yet. Who is the ruler of this area in here? We don't know who will be the ruler. There'll be a king, but there's no kingdom yet. Okay, it hasn't been officially declared to be the ruler of that area. Who's going to be the ruler of Australia and New Zealand here? We don't know. There's been no king that has been assigned that yet. And so when you read verse 12, there are 10 kings that are waiting in the wings. All right? To go and to take over and to rule and to reign the world with the Antichrist. Where's the Antichrist going to rule and reign from? From Jerusalem. From Jerusalem. Because he's going to set himself up in the temple. It's not the temple in Rome. It's not the temple in Christchurch here, the cardboard cathedral. He's not going to rule from there, because he's going to set himself up as God. And he's going to blaspheme God, because he's going to set himself up as God and to be worshipped. And to be worshipped. You see, Satan wants to mimic everything that God will do. Whatever God does is always going to come right. But, so, clearly when you see in verse 12 here, that the 10 horns are 10 kings. Our world is already broken up into 10 groups. Another sign of the Lord's soon return. We've already seen God's soon return in this establishment of the nation of Israel. Because Israel has to exist. There's no temple there yet, but they're getting all the stuff ready. And so, clearly, we're all set to go. We're all set to go. Now, are we set to go? Are we ready for the rapture? Some people are more ready than others. You know, always tell the story. People, we were standing in line for a fellowship meal, and someone said, "Oh, I hope not." And we said, "The Lord's coming back soon." "Oh, I hope not. Their life on earth was so good." Little do they know that life is going to be so much better. Liberal Christian scholars, now I'm talking about liberal, okay? Liberal Christian scholars hold that the concept of the Antichrist is rooted in mythology. What are you doing with the Bible? What are you doing with the Bible? They claim that the Bible does not contain the Word of God, but is a fallible human document. Some liberal Christian scholars believe that the idea of an Antichrist was carried over from Judaism into Christianity, but hold no basis in reality. Why do they call themselves Christians? B. McGinn, who's another author, wrote, "It is evident that the early Christians made use of traditions regarding eschatological opponents that depend upon Jewish, apocalyptic, and earlier prophetic traditions. Modern research has uncovered similar concerns about eschatological foes in the Qumran community." Okay, you see the liberalness here. Another view of the Antichrist is that the term Antichrist is just a metaphor. Just a metaphor for the principle of evil in the world. The evil in the world. That's Antichrist. It just describes the evil in the world. Now we know there's evil in the world. There is the spirit of Antichrist. We will admit that there is a spirit of Antichrist. But there's also going to be a kingdom, Antichrist kingdom. There's also going to be a man who is the Antichrist. So it's not a metaphor in its right interpretation. Just like Uncle Sam, this person continues on to say, just like Uncle Sam. We know who Uncle Sam is, don't we? We know who Uncle Sam is? Does everybody know who Uncle Sam is? Who's Uncle Sam? Lizzie? See, she doesn't. Who's Uncle Sam? Eli?
I'm not 100% sure, but I might have a hunch.
Yeah, go. We're safe here. We're not all going to laugh. What's your hunch?
Actually, I'm not 100% sure. No, I don't know.
You don't know. Okay, your father will tell you. Uncle Sam is?
Who's the man that points? I want you.
I want you. So who's the Uncle Sam? United States, America, yeah. So Uncle Sam is a personification of all that is American. So the Antichrist will be personification of all that is evil. Okay? The personification of all that is evil, just like Uncle Sam. Another view of the Antichrist is that it points to some kind of institution that propagates evil in the world. Again, it's sort of, yeah. Satan is the one that propagates, and well, the heart of man is desperately wicked anyway, you know. So, the preterists, okay, the ones that hold that's already happened, okay, that the book of Revelation has already been fulfilled, the preterists hold to this viewpoint. This view holds that the prophecies of the book of Revelation and Matthew has already happened and fulfilled. So who was the Antichrist? Well, one of those Roman rulers, yeah. And yet, it's funny because, as I asked you to remember, put away in your mind, when was the book of Revelation written? After. That doesn't make sense. And anyway, Satan must be bound now for 1,000 years, or has been released actually now. And Christ ruled on the earth. None of that makes sense. You can't put these things together and make sense of it. David Chilton says that the book of Revelation was written specifically to encourage the persecuted saints of the first century who were suffering under the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is then seen as the Antichrist. Okay? So in other words, let's just write about the Antichrist to make them feel better. to let them know that they're actually living in the end time, that the Lord's coming back soon and everything will be fine. To encourage. That doesn't make sense either. Interestingly, some early Christians believed that the Roman Empire was restraining the emergence of the Antichrist in his kingdom. There's so many different views out there. That the Roman Empire was restraining the Antichrist from coming on the scene. Because they were so good. The Roman Empire was so good, so beneficial for society. These early Christians prayed for its continuance. They wanted the Roman Empire to continue, thinking that the Roman Empire was restraining the emergence of the Antichrist. Okay? As long as the empire stood, they thought, the Antichrist could not emerge. Meanwhile back in the jungle, back in Rome, the Christians were suffering persecution by the Roman emperors. Things would be far worse without the Romans, they thought. Fast forward to 1000 AD. Fast forward. Just as there was mass hysteria when 1999 turned over to 2000, remember that? No, you might not remember. Mass hysteria. Y2K bug. Many believed that when the clock turned over from 999 to 1000, the Antichrist would emerge. Things haven't changed, have they? 1999 to 2000, the Antichrist is going to emerge. Y2K bug, everything's going to stop, and we're going to have a mark. It's the same thinking back in 999, turn over 1000. Funny, people gave all their possessions to the church, as if that would help. So, you going to sell all your stuff? No, we didn't. We just filled the bath with water. And then we pulled the plug after midnight. So they gave all their possessions to the church. Churches were filled with worshippers, and there was a great religious revival. People forgave debts and freed prisoners as they prepared for the end. 999 is going to turn over to 1000. Actually, usually when things go bad in the world, people tend to want to call out to God and come into the church, and then once things settle down again, they drift away. So where did this view come from? One of Augustine's key teachings said that the Antichrist would appear. Okay, well we accept that. The Antichrist is going to appear. The Bible tells us the Antichrist is going to appear. But he was saying that the Antichrist is going to appear at 1000 AD. Turning over from 999 to 1000 would mean that the Antichrist would appear. He taught that Satan had been defeated and was bound at the moment of Christ's death, and that the millennial kingdom would start 1000 years after the crucifixion. That doesn't match the Bible that I'm thinking of. So he said Christ died, and the moment he died, Satan was bound for 1000 years. Alright? Forgetting, of course, he didn't die at 0. But he said 1000 years, and then that's why the clicking over of the 999 to 1000 was the millennial kingdom. That it doesn't make sense. 1 Peter 5:8. I've done a lot of reading, and there's so many different views out there, and I haven't watched much YouTube, but there's just so much out there, just so much, that it doesn't even worth the effort listening and reading to it. You know, you almost want to go and shut the book. But, being true Bereans, we must check out to see whether these things are so. So, 1 Peter, I'm in 2 Peter, so let me just turn over a few pages. 1 Peter, chapter 5 and verse 8. 1 Peter 5, verse 8. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Satan wants to absorb you. He wants to eat you up and spit you out. Paul called the Antichrist man of lawlessness. I'll look at that a little later. He will perform counterfeit signs and wonders. Now, I've said counterfeit signs and wonders. I've just put that in there. But he performs signs and wonders. And he will deceive many people during the tribulation period, which the Lord will allow. John describes him as anti-God and as a hideous beast who will rise to political prominence during the tribulation. Now, I can understand why he rises. The church goes. There's a vacuum. There's a vacuum. And so there's people which are upset, looking for their loved ones, can't find them. The Antichrist will seek to dominate the world, be the world leader, unelected president through political maneuvering. Did the people vote for the leaders of the European Union? No. No. And yet there is a leader of the European Union. Unelected. He will be unelected. The world people aren't going to vote. We're going to have a world vote for this man. No, that ain't going to happen. The Antichrist will attempt to destroy the Jews. And we'll look at all those things that are in his mind, or actually Satan's mind. The Antichrist will persecute all true believers in Jesus Christ. And the Antichrist will set himself up as God in the temple. The Antichrist will create his own kingdom and seek to rule the world from Jerusalem. The Antichrist will glorify himself. He will be arrogant and he will boast of his success. Some say that he will rule the world from Rome, his seat on the 7 hills. But Jerusalem and the temple is a key importance for him. And we'll look a little bit more about that because of the false prophet and some of the things that are being put. Why some people say, I'll just go a little bit preempt what's coming up, but some people believe that the Antichrist will be the Pope. Where did that come from? And how can it be? If the Pope is the Antichrist, who's the false prophet? And if his seat is going to be on the 7 hills of Rome, he might be in league with Rome, but he wants to rule from Jerusalem. That's really important for Satan. Really important for Satan. He doesn't want to rule from Rome, but doesn't want to rule the world from Rome. He wants to rule from Jerusalem because he wants to be in charge. He wants to be God, but the job's not available. and never will be available, but that's what he wants to do. The false prophet will be the link between the religious world and the Antichrist. So him as leader and the religious world. The false prophet will seek to give legitimacy to the Antichrist as the Messiah. The long-awaited Messiah. Who's going to unite the world together under one ruler. And everybody's going to be worshipping him because he's the long-awaited Messiah, which the Jews have been looking for thousands of years. And now this man comes up and he performs miracles. And away he comes. Just as the Antichrist is a person, so will the false prophet be a person. Both will spend eternity in the lake of fire. We've already looked at Revelation chapter 20, verse 10. The false prophet will totally be motivated by Satan. Go back to Revelation 13 where we were started from. Totally motivated by Satan. Verse 8 here, start there. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. And I beheld another beast, which is the false prophet, coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Spake as a dragon. Motivated. The picture of the dragon is always Satan. Always Satan. And he spake as a dragon. He spake like Satan would speak. The false prophet will promote the worship of the Antichrist. Promote the worship of the Antichrist. Hence promote false doctrine. Verses 12 through to 14. He exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Now, interestingly, if you go back up to verse 8, there's some people are going to do that freely. They're going to accept it. They're going to worship. But we notice that in verse 8, who are the ones that are going to worship? Unbelievers. Those that do not believe that the Antichrist is to be worshipped. Or those that have rejected Christ are the ones that are going to worship the Antichrist. Those that are not written in the book of life of the Lamb. So, verse 12 again, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. Now remember, the beast is the Antichrist, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast. And there is the false doctrine, the worship of of idols, which had the wound by the sword and did live. So there's a whole lot of things that are happening, and we'll just finish here on verse 15. The false prophet will cause the execution of those who refuse to worship the Antichrist. Verse 15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Should be killed. Chapter 13 is quite an overview of the Antichrist and the Antichrist kingdom and the false prophet. We've already touched on some false doctrine, what people believe, whether people believe it's already happened, the book of Revelation has already happened, and which doesn't make sense. And we've seen about the clicking over of the 999 to 1000 AD, and how people were thinking that's when the Antichrist was going to come on the earth, and how people sold everything that they had and gave to the church and worshipped. And because they thought that was the millennial reign. Why need any of that stuff when God is going to rule for 1,000 years? But we're already past that, aren't we? We're 2019 already. And it's 19 years beyond that point. So there's lots more to look at yet. And yeah, I'm not even halfway in the number of slides I've got, but there's still things that I'm mulling over and reading about currently. So as I've already mentioned, some people believe that the Antichrist is going to be Judas Iscariot. He killed himself. He was it? I don't know. With a deadly wound. It doesn't make sense, and yet people still believe those things. It's amazing how people believe these things. They still believe in flat earth. The Bible doesn't teach that. And we still have Chris Perkins sending me YouTube links about flat earth, as if he's trying to convert me, But anyway, so let's finish there, and we'll pick it up again next week, and as we head into the Roman Catholic viewpoint and those sort of things as well. Let's close in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we do thank you, Lord, for your word. And Father, we've just quickly gone over some of the things about the Antichrist, his intentions, Father, the kingdoms that will be set up. Father, we read these things in chapter 13 and then sort of throw our hands up in horror and say, well,